welcome to episode number 2 of the Between Sermons podcast. I'm your host, Brent, and today's going to be a very special day because my lovely wife, Sol, is joining me on the show.
Yeah, my first podcast ever, so
Hey.
Here we go.
Well, I'm a veteran now because I've done this once before, so...
I need all of your wisdom and experience.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Today is either going to be an amazing time or it's going to be awful. I really don't know. I don't think there's any in between because this is basically a conversation between a husband and a wife, and that could go off the rails really quickly.
It's going to be the best. I promise you. You just stick around. You're going to be happy you did.
So before we jump in, though, let me just kind of explain. The Between Sermons podcast, really the idea behind this is I'm a communicator, I'm a preacher, but I would much rather have a conversation with somebody. And a lot of times preaching, no matter how we try and make it conversational or fun or whatever, interactive, it becomes a monologue.
Yeah.
Because one person standing on a stage talking at a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And what I would love is to be able to take that conversation or that monologue and turn it into a conversation, turn it into dialogue where you're actually able to sit down and talk through ideas, expand on some things, maybe, dig a little bit deeper into what we were talking about on Sunday. It doesn't mean you have to have heard the sermon from Sunday, but you might get a little bit more from the podcast. If you want to take a listen, there should be a link in the show notes to Sunday's message. And you're on the show because you were actually the one preaching on Sunday at CLC.
Yes, I was. We were talking about Jonah. It was really fun. I have to say that when I grew up, just listening to the stories and actually teaching the stories to kids, the Bible stories, Jonah was always my favorite because Jonah had a journey, and it was a different and very, very unique journey that he went on.
What made you love Jonah? Because for me, I almost hated the Jonah story because it's such an absurd story that has a really negative ending.
It is a downer.
We'll get into that in a little bit. But what made you love teaching Jonah?
I mean, it's fun. If you skip all of the sadness and all of the grumpiness that Jonah was doing, he got eaten by a big fish. We don't know if it was a whale or what kind of fish he was, but he got eaten by a whale fish and stayed there for 3 days, and then the fish throws him up on shore and he's still alive and just nothing ever happened. How that is just cool to me. I don't know,
that's the supernatural God, right?
It is the whole that was really gross
but kind of cool.
How does that happen? I think that was part of the reason why it was such a fun thing for me.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about this. I've never done the research to really know if this is accurate or not, but I've heard preachers talk about it, so it's totally got to be true, right? But that Jonah was so effective in his evangelism because apparently, the process of him being in the belly of the whale would have bleached his skin,
right?
In a really weird way. And so when he's standing in Nineveh, telling them that God's going to destroy them, he looks like a ghost. He's the creepiest looking guy that they've ever seen, and everybody's just okay,
whatever you say.
Yeah. So I have no idea if that's accurate or not, but it's kind of fun to think about.
Nothing in the Bible tells us that he showered after that. So I don't know what kind of smells he had on him or what was going on. You always picture him with seaweed in his hair. I don't know. It's
that
just
is disgusting,
weird.
but I kind of love it. So when we tell this story to adults, but really especially to kids, the emphasis on the story is this idea of obedience.
Right.
And really, that's the heart of the message. There's more to it than that, but I think that's an awesome place for us to kind of to start off in this conversation of what does obedience actually look like?
Obedience is hard. Obedience is hard because for me, it is more than just the action. And yes, sometimes you just have to do it, right? You just have to do it and you just have to follow through. But we teach our kids that obedience is doing things right away, all the way, and with a happy heart.
Yeah. And
just having that be your everyday, your every situation, it takes a lot. I think that being obedient to God, being obedient to people, being just really allowing yourself to follow through, it takes a lot. I think that I think that it is a process, and sometimes we just make it so plain and so simple, like just obey. And honestly, it's hard.
Yeah,
Like, it
sometimes
is-
that's easier said than done.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, you want people to just do it, but we all are in a different place in our lives. We all are in a different journey. We all are trusting in a different rate. You know, so all of us have to be walking in this process differently.
Yeah.
And I think that what is important for me is to know that God knows best,
Yeah.
and that I have to just put my trust in Him. You know, that when God is telling me to do something, when I feel the nudge of the Holy Spirit for a specific thing, it's gonna be worth it to just stick with it, to just say yes, Lord, instead of me trying to find an excuse to not do it.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think that obedience is the very first step for our walk with God. Like, we need to be able to say,
Yes, Lord.
wherever you ask me to do, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And it might not be comfortable. It might not be what I wanted to do at the moment. Maybe I really actually wanted to do something completely different. But if you are telling me to do something, I need to trust that you have my best interest in mind, that you know everything that I don't, that you see the whole picture,
Yep.
and just follow with that, you know?
Yeah, it's the sinner's prayer. You know, we learn from Romans, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. And sometimes I think we just kind of gloss over that part. It's like, just invite him into your heart. No, it's confessing he's Lord. When something or someone is the Lord of your life, that means they're in control, that they're the boss. That means that when they say to do something, your immediate reaction is obedience, because they're Lord. It isn't just about inviting Jesus to come live in your heart. It's saying you're in charge, not me, and that can be a hard thing for people to do.
Yeah, because we all have the things that we think that we should be doing.
Yeah,
We all have our selfish nature. We all have our own desires, our own plans, and sometimes we feel like if what God is telling me to do doesn't go with this, then it must not be God. But it is, and I think that we just need to be receptive to His voice. Like, what is He really telling us to do? And just, for me, it just comes to trust.
Yeah.
It comes to submission.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's understanding that even if I don't understand it, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Even if I might not agree with what you're telling me to do right now, because I still want to do what I still want to do, and I don't think that your process, God, is what I need to do right now, I'm still gonna trust that you know what is best for me. It's just submitting myself to God and say, here it is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that we put qualifiers in our obedience, like I'll obey if,
Yes.
or I'll obey when. Like I'll obey this first step when you give me step 2, or I'll obey this if it lines up with what I already wanted or what I was already planning on doing. But really, our obedience to God, there should be no qualifier to it. It should be just, because you said so, I will. That's, one of my favorite things to teach. Because you said so, I will. Like, sometimes because I said so should be enough in our relationship with God. But that's a hard place to get to.
Yeah, and honestly, when we obey God, we show Him that we love Him, that we care about what He has to say. Like the Bible says, if you love me, obey my commands. Like, He's saying, just follow through. I remember one time I was asking my kid, Bennett, to do something. I don't even remember what it was. It was a few years ago. And he kept disobeying. Like, he was just not doing what I was asking him to do. And I asked him repeatedly. And then I went and I was washing the dishes. And he comes to me and he hugs me. And he's like, I love you. And my first thing to say to him was like, no, you don't. Because if you loved me, you would have done what I asked you to do. And in that moment, God spoke to me. He was like, exactly.
Right?
And I was like, ouch. Because I was so frustrated that I was asking my kid to do something and he never did. And then he comes and tells me how much he loved me. I was like,
no, you don't.
bro, you don't love me. Like, I've been asking you to do something. If you loved me, you would have just listened to me. And it was a heart check immediately from God saying, my point exactly.
Yeah. Honestly, there's so much in the Bible that actually takes on all new meaning when you're a parent.
Oh yeah.
Like just the father's love for us, like it means something different when you've got your own
Yes.
kids. But speaking of kids, so you said something a minute ago, that we do teach at home, that obedience is right away, all the way, and with a happy heart. You may have heard it as right away, all the way, in a happy way. I prefer the
The
with a
happy
happy heart, because I think that you can do things in a happy way that your heart's not in.
Right.
And so doing it with a happy heart, I think, is actually it's an improvement. It may not rhyme as well, but I think that it really gets to the, pun intended, the heart of the issue, right? But here's something that I've started to notice with our kids, and you can kind of jump in here and see if this is accurate in your view. So we've got 3 kids. We've got 3 statements for obedience: right away, all the way, and with a happy heart. I feel like each of our kids struggles with a different one of those 3.
Right.
So our oldest, Jaden, does not get right away. Like he'll do exactly what you tell him to do, and he'll do it in a happy way, like he's with a happy heart. Like he's not grudgingly, he's not complaining as he does it, but it's like, hey, Jaden, clean your room, and like maybe 5 days later he'll clean his
You'll
room.
get to it.
Right? Like eventually it'll happen. Bennett, our middle child, is absolutely with a happy heart. Like that kid, he's on it. Like you ask him to do something, and he will do it right then and there. The only exception to that is if he's playing FIFA. And then
Which
it's
is
like
99% of the time.
which is then it's just, can I finish this match first? And then he'll finish that match, and he goes and he does the thing, and he does it to the completion. Like, I mean, you tell him to clean his room and he gets the vacuum out.
Yeah,
Like-
he makes me so happy.
Yeah, like that kid will go the extra mile, but he will be nasty with his attitude while he's doing it. Like he's just like, ugh. Like if any kid gives us eye rolls, it's probably that one.
Yeah.
And then our princess, Kelsey. She's the youngest, and she will do it when you tell her to. And she does it very happily, but she'll get like 5 minutes into something and quit. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, Kelsey, clean your toys in the basement. Okay. And she goes down and she puts away like 3 things and then starts playing with 8.
Yeah, and then she's like, I'm done. You said to just do some. I'm
Yeah.
like, some doesn't mean 2.
Yeah. So we got 3 kids. We got 3 statements. Each one is struggling in a different area. How do you help them? You know, because I think a lot of times the way we help kids is really the way we help ourselves. So like, how do you get with Bennett and say, hey, okay, here's a heart issue we need to work on, or hey, Jaden, there's an immediate like response that you should have, like not when you get around to it, but like, hey, obedience is actually doing the thing. Like the other night, he's playing with the dog, and we're like, hey, brush the dog, and he's just like playing with the dog, and we're like, hey, brush the dog. The brush is right there, and he's like, ha ha ha, yeah, and he's just playing.
And then he left and he was like, well, maybe next time when you ask me, I will actually do it. I'm like,
Yeah, obedience is nice once in a while, right?
like next time, like in as if not today.
Yeah. So how do you help Bennett do it with a happy heart? How do you help Kelsey do it all the way? How do you help Jaden do it right away?
I think that it's teaching them the value of it.
Okay.
Because I think that when they understand that there's value in helping, when there's value in listening, when there's value in being a part of what is happening, then you can do it with a little more purpose. You know, that when it is just a task, sometimes I think that that's our problem. We just minimize everything to tasks,
Okay.
you know, and it is just checking the blank. And that can get very monotonous.
Yeah.
And then you just want to put it off because you know, or like, I don't feel like doing it right now. I'll
Right.
just check the task tomorrow, you know. But when you put value in it, when you see that there is something that is important, then you will consider that a little bit more. Then you will do it with a little more purpose, more happily. You will want to do it well, so you will finish it all.
Because it's less about what you're doing and it's more about who you're doing it for.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like that. It ties into that love component.
Yes, it is all about, it's all about your heart. It really is. And it is understanding that it is not just about the specific thing. It is about why you are doing it and for who you are doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that changes everything, because when I know that if I finish doing all of the dishes, I am helping my family, I can do it happily. When I know that if I go and help my kid with their bedroom, they're gonna be better off because their room is clean, then I will do it with a happier heart than just to say, this kid is a mess, I have to clean.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there's two different things. Like the way that you see it will help you to have the right heart for it.
Yeah. One of the first lessons I learned with obedience to God, I was about 12 years old. I was actually in Mexico. It was my first missions trip to your church. And the ironic thing
remember
about
him.
it is we'd never met,
We
or
never
at least I
met.
don't think we did, but it was a mission trip to your church. So I'm 12. And we're at this family's house. It was almost like a Paul encounter. Like it was like we were invited over to a home to like share a meal together and then preach the gospel. And then there was family members that were going to get saved. Like it was a total like New Testament church kind of moment. But I remember we're having kind of a worship service in the house, and there were some boys that were from just the neighborhood that just kind of walked by and stood in an open doorway and just were staring at us. And just felt like God was saying, hey, go invite them to come inside. And I'm like, well, I don't speak Spanish, so that's not going to happen. And I'm a little disobedient at 12. And so it was like for the course of, I don't know, maybe a song or two. So I don't know, 5-10 minutes, I just felt stronger and stronger. Go invite them to come in, go invite them to come in, go invite them to come in. And finally, I just couldn't shake it anymore. So reluctantly, you know, I did not get the right away all the way with a happy heart. And so I go over to the kids, and they were about my age, maybe a little bit younger, and did my best like charades of like you
Tú,
inside,
aquí,
yeah,
tú,
like,
aquí.
yeah. No, I didn't even have that for Spanish. Like all I had was. It was super awkward. To which their response was to run away laughing. Super effective. My first attempt at evangelism went very well. They ran
I'm
away
glad you stuck with it.
laughing, and so I go back in the house, and I'm like, that was the dumbest thing. Like, God, I'm not happy with you. Like, because I feel like you really, really were telling me that I was supposed to go do this thing. And it was funny. Like I was really dejected. I was really upset. And somebody else from the team came over to me. And I don't know if they were watching or saw what happened or what, or if God just gave them a prophetic word in the moment. But they came over to me and they said, Brent, you just got to understand that you're not responsible for the outcome.
Right.
You're simply responsible to be obedient to what God tells you to do. And that just, for me, that gave me such a freedom in obedience. Which kind of sounds weird, right? Freedom and obedience. But it did. It gave me this freedom to be able to obey what God told me to do without worrying about the outcome, without
That's
worrying
good.
about, is this going to be effective? Is this going to work? It didn't matter if it was going to work anymore. So now when God tells me to do something, like I'm totally fine falling flat on my face and it being a total failure. I'm more okay with that than I am okay with the idea that I'm not obedient to what God tells me to do when he tells me to do it.
That's good. That's good. And I think that that's what we all should be aspiring to, you know, because I think that a lot of us limit our obedience to the results.
Yeah.
And we say, okay, if I'm going to go and tell this person about Jesus and they're going to get saved, then
I'll
it's
do
worth it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But if I'm going to go tell them and they're going to still say, nah, thanks,
Yeah.
then it wasn't worth it. Like we sometimes feel like the result has to always be positive
Yep.
in order for me to actually do it and feel like it was worth doing. It was worth taking the risk. It was worth the embarrassment or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's times that the answer is gonna be no, but still God is gonna send you to do it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the Bible talks about how some of us are the ones that plant the seed, and some of us are the ones that are watering it, and some of us are the ones that you know are gonna see the fruit. But God is the one that brings out the growth, and you don't know what part of the process you are. So it might be that you're the one planting the seed, and that person is still gonna say no thanks.
Yeah.
But you still have to go there and put the seed in the ground.
Yeah. That's
So
good. I love it.
So yeah, it's that's beautiful.
Yeah. Fun times. Okay. So confession time. We're going to get into another interesting conversation with this, but first, confession time. I make a horrible counselor. Which is an awkward thing for a pastor because everybody sees you as a pastor, so you immediately become their therapist too. And so people will constantly come to me and asking me for advice and asking me for help in their situation. And usually my response is, okay, let's figure out the stupid thing that you've done, and then let's not do that stupid thing anymore. which is why I'm not good at counseling. But one of the things that I think frustrates me, or that happens a lot, and you can add some grace to this, um, is when somebody comes to me and says, "Well, I'm really wanting to hear the voice of God. I really want Him to tell me what I'm supposed to do next." And you get into that conversation, and you quickly discover that He already told them 2 years ago what they were supposed to do, and they still haven't done the last thing that they told them to do. It's one of the things that I do love about the Jonah story. Like, Jonah is told, "Go to Nineveh and give them this message." Jonah says no, heads the opposite direction. Storm, throw it in the sea, gets swallowed by a fish. Takes him 3 days to finally be like, "All right, I get it. Like, I need to go." And so gets vomited up and asks God what to do. And God tells him, "Go to Nineveh and give the message." Like, he spent 3 days in a fish, and God didn't change his mind. Like, the instruction was still the same. And so I think for a lot of people, we struggle with this idea of, I was disobedient to the thing that He told me to do, and I'm sorry about that. I repent for being disobedient. Now tell me something else to do. And God's like, "Yeah, I forgive you. Yeah, we'll make the fish throw you back up on the sea, but you still have to be obedient to the thing that I told you to do."
Yeah. And I think that sometimes it's because we didn't like what he told us to do, and that's why we didn't do it. Right? Like, it's like, well, I didn't like that one. Give me another one. But yeah, God is going to give you the same thing. And I have heard a lot of people say this to me as well. You know, like, I haven't heard from God in a long time. And what is the last thing that you heard? You know, and now you're doing it. And a lot of times it's no. I know what He told me last time, and I haven't done it. And then I've been trying to listen to His voice, and He's just silent. Well, let's start doing what He told us to do. And honestly, it's not even just to say other people. That happens to me too.
Yeah.
Like, there's some things that I'm like, "God, but I've been praying about my kid for this." And the God is like, "Are you doing what I asked you to do?" And I'm like, "You're right."
Oops.
You know? And it might not be because, for me personally, God had asked me to get some Bible verses for my son Jaden and put him in his bedroom. And I've been praying that God will help him. He battles with anxiety and just feeling depressed quite often. So I kept just praying, you know, like, "God, help him. Just, God, do something." And the other day I was praying for him, and God was like, "Are there Bible verses in his room?" And I was like,
Oops.
And it is not because I don't believe the Bible is going to help him or anything. I just get busy and I forget, you know? So sometimes we just need to stop and do what He has asked us to do.
Yeah. Before worrying about what God's going to say next, do what He told you last.
Right.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, you're like, "I want step 2 and step 3, and I just want you to keep talking to me." And He's like, "Well, I don't want to just be saying words to somebody that is not going to listen."
Man. Ouch.
You know, like if you listen to me, I'll speak to you. But if you just want to hear my voice for the goosebumps, that is not what this is all about.
That's huge, and I think everybody can relate to that in a sense, in a degree, that you've been talking with somebody that isn't really paying attention.
Right.
Like, do you really want to keep talking to them? Like I've literally walked away from conversations where it's like, "Oh, I guess you don't care." Like, and then we treat God the same way.
I feel like sometimes we treat God like the whole, "How you doing?" but you don't really care about how the person is doing. You know, like, "Hey, how you doing?" And you just,
keep on walking.
as they are saying good, you already passed by, right? So we're like, "God, how you doing?" and speak to me, and He's trying to speak to you, and you already moved on. So it is just a matter of really spending the time and listening to Him, and then doing what He's telling us to do. It goes hand in hand. It is not just God speaking to us just so that we say that we hear His voice. Yeah. Like, if He's going to speak to us and we're really going to want His guidance, we have to follow what He's saying.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, so we've talked a lot about obedience, and we could probably keep talking about obedience for a while, but there's a couple other things that I would, because it's one of those things that, so confession, pastor, preacher, follower of Christ for a very long time, obedience is still something that I have to struggle with, and I have to choose every single day. And you think that you've gotten to the place where you're like, "I'm obedient," and then He tells you to do something that you're like, I don't know if I'm ready for that one. And you got to relearn that lesson all over again. But just for the sake of time, I want to move kind of into a conversation about compassion. Because that, for me, this is why I hate the story of Jonah. And I think part of it, if I'm brutally honest with myself, is that I can see myself in Jonah too much, where it it shines this light of this is the path that I'm trying to walk, that I'm trying to learn is compassion. That Jonah's story is he has zero compassion, and maybe rightfully so, in the sense that like Nineveh, the Assyrian Empire was like evil, evil, evil. Like what
bad.
what does Nahum describe it as? It's like whore city,
And
blood city, murder city. Like it's like brutal.
Like how you want your city to be known by that,
right?
Like no thanks.
Like literally, it's a city that is like God says, "I am against this city." Like that's how bad they are. And so like you can almost justify like Jonah's stance against them, and his lack of compassion for them. But like at the end of the story, Jonah is more upset at God killing a plant that he was receiving shade from than he was at the possible destruction of 120,000 people.
Yeah, that's harsh.
Like, where's the compassion, Jonah?
And the thing is that I think that there's so many things in our lives that we need to unlearn. You know, I think that since you are growing up, everybody's telling you, you know, you do bad things and bad things will happen. You know, we are kind of programmed in that justice has to happen, you know, and in karma, you know, like the whole idea of like
instant karma,
like what goes around comes around. So there's a lot of things that as Christians we have to unlearn.
Yeah.
Because we have been programmed to expect the bad stuff to happen or even wish for the bad things to happen to the people that are doing wrong.
Yeah.
And however, like we are going to have consequences in the natural for our actions, absolutely, because we live in a world that has consequences. But I think that when it comes to our souls, we should hope and desire for people to not get what they deserve.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think, you know, I'm not going to take away from the fact our God is a God of justice.
Right.
I mean, that is what heaven, hell, sin, consequence, that all of that is wrapped up, and he is a just God. The justice that he gives out, like, it doesn't even look like the justice we would give out because his standard is so much higher than ours.
Right.
So it's just for him to destroy all of us. He's well within his rights based on the level of perfection that he is and that he would require of us. But here's the challenge is that for a lot of us, we want justice for other people, but we want mercy for ourselves.
Ooh.
Like we want to be forgiven for things that we condemn others for. I think it's Craig Rochelle talks about this. I'm not sure where he got it from, but it's this idea that we accuse of others of what we excuse in ourselves. So an example of that would be like somebody shows up late to work, and immediately you're judging them and you're critical of them. It's like, man, they just need to have better time management. They need to leave the house earlier. And it doesn't matter what excuse they had of traffic or whatever, no matter what it is, like they were late. That's a problem. We need to discipline them. Mm-hmm. We need justice because they're late. At the same time, if you show up late to a meeting, it's like, well, the kids, you know, had this problem and the bus didn't come on time and I ran into traffic. And all of a sudden you're making all of these justifications for the same exact offense that somebody else had, but you want justice for them and mercy for yourself.
That man, that's hard. That's hard because the Bible tells us, you know, judge others in the same way that you're gonna be judged. You know, so it is one of those that if you really want mercy for yourself, you have to extend mercy to others.
Yeah,
you know, and it is difficult. It is difficult because I think that it's just in our nature to point at people and say, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. But that puts you as somebody that is not doing anything wrong. And I think that it is always looking inward.
Yeah.
You know, more than you are looking at other people, like understanding that you're running your own race.
Yeah.
And that it is a matter of you getting better in your relationship with God. That it is a matter of you having the compassion for others that you want people to have for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't do that.
Yeah. And really it is compassion. That's what we're talking about, that we need to have a heart for people. Yeah. And that's a lesson that I've had to learn I'm continuing to learn. I'm grateful for the opportunities that I've had to learn that lesson because I think by nature, by default, my level of compassion is really, really low. And a lot of times I confess that a lot. Like I talk about this and how I'm growing in this area and how good it's been for me to process through that. But then people will look at you and they're like, Sol is so sweet. She's so kind. She's so loving. She's so caring. And so they attribute you to, oh, she's the compassionate one and Brent's not. Please set the record straight.
I am very compassionate.
Not so much.
No, I grew up, and I don't know.
You have a brutal family.
I don't know if it's. I was about to say I don't know if it's my family. I don't know if it's cultural because I think that for the most part, Mexicans we are more hardcore,
thick skin.
Like we're more hardcore, So like I am the person that you trip and fall in front of me, and yes, I will help you, but I will laugh first. I will just burst out like.
Yeah.
Dude, like really, you didn't see that?
Yeah, you were like a teenager and you were wrestling with your mom in the bedroom and she fell off the bed and like dislocated her shoulder. Like her arm is just laying all limp and you're just laughing.
Like sideways. But she was laughing too though. That's what I'm saying. Like we were a little different. We were a little different. We for us Hispanics, you call people by wherever
physical trait
they have or whatever wrong thing that they have experienced, right? Yeah. So you have el flaco and you have el chino and you have el gordo,
so skinny, curly hair and fatty.
Yeah, so like and it is not that you're trying to hurt them, but it's just like that's what you look like, bro. Like, what do you want me to do?
It's very descriptive.
Yeah. So it is very hard sometimes to just go into compassion mode immediately. Yeah. So like with my kids, I remember one time Kelsey fell down and I started laughing. I couldn't stop laughing. I thought it was hilarious. And then of course I picked her up and everything. And then she started to cry. And then I thought she was crying because she fell down. And then she said, I'm crying because you were laughing at me. And I was like, well, it was funny. But I realized like I can hurt people because it sounds like I don't care.
Yeah.
Even though I do care, but the compassion like doesn't translate, doesn't translate. Like I want to help, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it is not always my first response.
Yeah. I think that is why our oldest son, Jaden, is like God's gift to the two of us.
Yes.
To teach us compassion.
Yes.
Because that kid feels for people in a way that I don't know that I've seen that in anyone else.
Yeah, no. He's amazing.
And like we tell the story sometimes of him seeing the homeless person and just being in tears and like I didn't even notice the guy there.
Yeah.
Like he just sees things. I remember we picked him up from school one time and there's a kid on crutches and Jaden is just he's heartbroken for this other kid that like
he didn't even know him.
Didn't know his name, wasn't a friend of his in class. It literally just some kid in his school on crutches, and Jaden is just heartbroken on behalf of this kid and just wants to pray for him and wants God to heal him. It's like, well, what's his name? I have no idea. Like he's just a kid on crutches. Like that gift of compassion to be able to see people that are hurting and immediately want to do something about it. Yeah. To feel it exactly like you said. And so I'm grateful. We've talked a little bit about like my time at Thriftique. So I was the manager for this thrift store that ran a food pantry. So a lot of our clientele, homeless, people that are just absolutely in the hardest places in their life, a lot of alcoholics, drug addicts, like just being around them, it started to soften me. And I honestly, I'm so grateful for that time because it taught me compassion, because sometimes it's really easy to judge people at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you actually hear their story, and like it's really easy to look at an alcoholic and say, well, if you just stop drinking.
Right.
But then you sit down and you actually talk with them, and like the first thing out of their mouth is, I wish I could stop.
Yeah.
It's like, I hate the fact that I'm doing this. I'm throwing away my life. I remember talking with a guy that literally said I had two choices. I could pay my rent or be evicted. If I paid my rent, then there was no money for alcohol. If I get evicted, I can at least be drunk on a park bench. And I would rather be drunk on a park bench than sober in my little apartment. because that's how addicted he was. And like in those moments, like God just started breaking my heart. And so I think that to learn compassion, I do think that it is something you can learn.
Yeah.
That there's some people like Jaden, our son, that is born with an extra high level of compassion. But I think that it's something that you can ask God to give you more compassion. And I think that it's something that you can put yourself into situations where you're going to become more compassionate.
I think that for me, I love that the Bible often refers to compassion as moved with compassion, because I think that compassion, it is not just feeling sorry for people,
Right.
because you're like, oh, I feel pity for you, right? Like
Yeah, pity and compassion are different.
I feel sorry for what you're going through. It is really doing something about it, like that. It makes you do something. It moves you. So that's why I love when the Bible refers to it. They were moved with compassion. Like it was this feeling that made them do something. It was this feeling that propelled the desire for change. And I think that that's what we are supposed to have, a type of compassion that really makes us say, I'm gonna do something to change this situation. I see somebody on crutches, I'm actually gonna pray for them, not just be like, man, it must be really awful to be on crutches,
Or even
like
just like help carry their bag.
anything.
Like do hold the door open a little bit longer, but instead of just being like, oh man, it sucks for them.
Exactly.
Or I'm just going to pray from a distance.
Yeah. True compassion makes you act.
Yeah.
I think that it is not a passive word. It has to be an action word.
Yeah. I love it. But the compassion is the thing that Jonah was missing.
Yep.
And so when I read his story and I look at the way he was treating them, the way he got upset about this dumb plant that dies, but wasn't going to be upset about 120,000 people dying, like it's scary to see, like, okay, could that be me? Could I be the one that is more concerned with my own comfort, my own status, my own whatever? Because that was Jonah's issue. Like when he's upset at the plant being killed, it's because the plant was giving him shade.
Yeah.
Like it was like, those 120,000 people, they don't affect me, but this
they don't
plant
do anything
did.
for me.
Right. And so because I'm inconvenienced by this thing, and it's like, man, when will you be inconvenienced by people dying, people going to hell? Like when will you let that be the bigger inconvenience than I lost my shade?
And I think that sometimes we read these stories and we're like, he was really awful. I would never, like I would never feel like that for 120,000 people. Yeah. Yet you go onto the internet and you realize that there's this whole cancel culture, that there's this whole instant karma, right? Yeah. And everybody's celebrating when somebody else gets it wrong. And you're actually hoping for this person to fail because they're awful. And, like when COVID first hit, how many horrible comments were happening of people saying, well, I hope that so-and-so get COVID and die. Yeah. Like, it is happening today. It is something that it is really, really alive in our society today. Yeah. We really want to see people getting what they deserve. And we actually almost pop our popcorn and just sit there watching, right? We're like, well, they had it coming. Like, they were awful. Like, let's cancel them. Like, let's just forget about them. Let's all send them hate mail. It's awful.
Yep. Well, and it ties into, and this is kind of where we'll land this plane, is evangelism. Like God has given you a platform.
Yeah.
Whatever circle you're in, wherever influence you have at your workplace, in your community, in your house, wherever it is, God has given you a place where can you become so uncomfortable with the thought of somebody in your neighborhood going to hell that you're going to do something about it? Because you talked about this on Sunday, but like God's desire is for everyone. To be saved. It's 2 Peter 3:9. I got it here on the screen. The Lord is not slow about keeping his promise, as some people think. So he's talking about Jesus' return. He says he's waiting for you. The Lord does not want any person to be punished forever. He wants all people to be sorry for their sins and turn from them.
Yeah.
I want to have the same heart for all people that God does.
Yeah.
But that is a really hard thing. This may get us canceled, but like God desires for a child molester to go to heaven.
Yes. Yeah. He wants murderers and terrorists and every single person that you consider the worst on earth.
Yep.
He wants them
He would rather them be in heaven than in hell.
absolutely. Now, not in the current state though.
Yeah.
He doesn't want them to just enjoy the sin and then go to heaven.
Yeah.
He wants them
Because there's still justice.
right. He wants people to repent. He wants them to say, I
Yeah.
condemned everything that I have done till this point.
Yeah.
And from this moment forward, I want to follow Jesus. And that's what we are supposed to be looking for, to be able to be the light for those people, to say, hey, what you are doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And if you continue on that path, then hell is your eternity.
Yep.
But if you stop your evil ways, like what happened to the Ninevites, like they put a stop to all of their evil
Yep.
and turn to God.
Yep.
That is what we need to desire for the worst of people, because I think that sometimes it's easier to think that I want my neighbor to be saved, like he needs Jesus, and you just see it because
He's a nice guy.
he's a nice guy, and it will be really, really good for him to know Jesus. But what happens when you think about somebody that is kidnapping people?
Yeah.
What happens when you think about the murderers or the child molesters or stuff like that? Like, do you still have that? I hope that they find Jesus, or you're like, send them straight to hell. Because there's a lot of people that are like, all of them are going to hell in a hell basket, or what's
Handbasket.
Handbasket.
Yeah.
Well, the hell is a hell basket, I guess. But like, we should not rejoice in knowing that people are dying without Jesus.
Yeah.
We should desire people to know that there is hope, that there is salvation, and really desire for them to stop their evil ways and turn to Jesus, because that's it.
Yep.
That it is not just a magic thing, like just everybody just goes to heaven. It is stopping their evil ways and recognizing that God is faithful and He can forgive even the worst thing that you could ever imagine.
Well, that's what Peter says in that verse. He wants all people to be sorry for their sins and turn from them.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the important things that our culture needs to hear.
Yeah.
It's really easy in culture to say, yeah, but Jesus hung out with sinners and prostitutes and tax collectors and all that. But it's this idea that Jesus hung out with them, but He didn't leave changed. They left changed.
Ooh.
Like, sometimes I think that we're so quick to just jump into sinful culture, and we leave feeling okay about the sin instead of them leaving changed. It's
them leaving convicted.
right. It's the woman caught in adultery.
Yeah.
Like, I love that story because the first half is like so much compassion,
Yeah.
so much love, so much care, and then in just one short phrase, Jesus says, "Go and sin no more."
Yeah.
Like, that's the gospel. The gospel is, look, I'm not condemning you. There's compassion here. There's love here. There's forgiveness here. But stop doing the thing that you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't just continue in it. Like, it's the lesson that we all need to learn, that you can have compassion for people without compromising.
Yeah.
Without saying, well, I care about them so much, I need to be okay with the sin that they're engaged in. No, you don't. In fact, I would argue that that's less compassionate, because you're showing compassion for the 60, 70, 80 years or whatever they're going to live on this earth, and zero compassion for the eternity that they're going to have after that.
That's right. Yeah. And honestly, like, I have been hit by this lately. I was in worship the other day, and it was a great moment of worship. My hands are in the air. I was just enjoying the presence of God. And all of a sudden, I just felt like, how many people don't have the freedom of raising their hands because they are trapped in sin? And it really pulled me out of this moment of worship. And I literally started crying, and I started praying for people that they don't have the luxury of coming to the church and raising their hands and feeling the presence
freedom
of God because they are trapped in sin.
Yeah.
And I think that we all need a little bit of that in our lives. And I wish that was my heart every single day, that I will not just feel it one moment, but that it will be my everyday to say, God, I want to see people the way that you see them.
Yeah.
I want to hurt for them. I need to desire for them to be able to raise their hands and experience your presence, because I have that luxury. I have that honor. I want everybody else to do that,
Yeah.
because I know where I was.
Yeah.
I know that my life wasn't perfect, and I needed Jesus.
Yeah.
And I needed the mercy, and I needed the grace, and I needed for somebody to
And I
show
still
me.
do.
And I still do. I needed somebody to show me that God is a good God, that God can give second chances, that God can raise me up. And how many people don't know that?
Yeah.
And the thing is, some people love their sin. Yeah. Some people are uncomfortable with it. Some people are like, I don't know what's going on in my life, but I don't like it. But some people enjoy it. Yeah. Some people profit from their sin. Yeah. So it's like sin is great business. What are we doing for those people to see that there's change that can happen in their lives?
Yeah.
That there's hope for them, that there's mercy, that if they only just really see what God sees,
yeah,
they can be different.
So what does that look like? What does it look like for somebody to go and tell someone else about Jesus? What do you got to know? What do you got to be equipped with? What answers do you need to have prepared for what questions? Like, how do we need to approach this?
Well, I honestly, personally think that it's all about your experience with God. We can have all answers to wherever you want, but if you have never experienced it, you will not know what to do.
Yeah.
So I think that if your life has been transformed by Jesus, if you really have repented from your sin and your life is different because of Jesus, you have everything that you need.
Yeah.
Because you can say, I was this, but Jesus came.
Yeah.
I was living a life that was trapped in so much sin and so much dysfunction. My life was not going well.
I had no hope. Now I have hope.
But Jesus came into my life, and I might not be able to explain how everything happened. I just know that I felt lighter. Like I have talked to a lot of people, and they're like, I pray to have Jesus in my heart, and I feel lighter. Like I feel happier. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't understand, and we cannot explain the supernatural of what God does. But if you have experienced it, if you really value that, and if you are in love with Jesus, you can talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
And I understand there's going to be people that are going to ask you questions, and you're not going to have answers. And I think that it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Yeah.
Because none of us know everything. I cannot tell you how many times people have come to me and said, what about this? I'm like, I have no clue. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to do a little more digging and say, okay, I don't have an answer for that, but I look it up, I'll ask around. I'll study a little bit more on that and get back to you.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely going to happen.
And I think you can even take it a step further and be like, you know what? I have a question about that too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a lot of people are going to say, well, how does a good God allow such evil in the world? I've got an answer for that. But most of my life, I'd be like, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, that's tough. And I wrestle with that, just like you're wrestling with that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, I'll ask God in heaven. Like, I'll ask him, like, hey, so why did that happen?
Yeah.
Because I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. But my understanding and my knowledge and my wisdom in that area was not a prerequisite for my obedience or my surrender to him.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, there's a lot of things that I will not be able to explain. Like my kids, they tried me every day. Like, especially Kelsey, my little girl. She has all questions, and how can God be here and in China at the same time? Girl, I have no clue.
So it's called omnipresence.
And I don't necessarily know how that works, And like she asks all kinds of questions about faith because she wants to understand it. And there's a lot of things that I don't have answers for her, and I have to say, let me figure that out, And there's times that I'm like, I honestly don't know. But I believe that the Bible is true. So we just have to believe that it is true, So,
and I have enough experience in my life to back up that claim.
Right. So I just know that he hears me, and I know that he hears somebody in China, and I know that he heard me when I was in Mexico. So I know that God is that God is here. So I think that it's fine to say I don't know. It's fine to say I will find out. But what is just gonna happen is the fact that you have an experience. That is something that nobody can take away. When you can truly say and point and say, okay, this is who I was and this is how my life has changed. There is no rebuttal to that.
Yeah.
Like, I know who I was. I know who I am now.
Yeah.
I know what I did and I know what I do now. I know how I felt and I know how I feel now. Yeah. I might not have all of the answers, but that is just the truth. Like, there is transformation that had happened.
And it doesn't mean that every day is going to be perfect, or that, every situation is going to be magically better.
Right.
It's that there's been enough impact in my life for me to say, this is real.
Yes.
And I've got questions on the journey, and I know you do too, and we're going to figure these things out together.
Yeah.
As best as we can, but don't let that be the stopping point.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of us, we look at, well, I don't know how I'm going to respond to these. And a lot of times it's just these hypothetical what ifs, like, what if they ask me this? When in reality, they're going to be like, do you want to come to church with me? And they're like, okay. It's like, oh yeah, like all those scenarios that I had played in my head, like none of them happened. But we get so just kind of turned off, closed off of following through because we feel unprepared. And and it's kind of funny because like we're doing this thing called Life University at the church right now, and next month we're starting a new series in those classes on evangelism, and then later on, sometime this year or possibly next year, I'll be doing a course on apologetics, defending the faith and having answers to these questions. So like I do believe in equipping and training and having answers for these things, but I feel like we also need to understand we don't need to overcomplicate it.
Right.
That the gospel message is the good news of Jesus Christ, that he has brought hope to the world.
Yeah.
That yes, there are consequences to our sin, but through Jesus, we can find freedom, we can find hope for the future, and we find eternity. And that's the message.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest example for us is the disciples. Like Jesus died, he rose from the dead, and they went and they spread the good news everywhere they could. Yeah. They didn't have a Bible. Yeah. They didn't have the Gospels to read to them. They didn't have, like all of the letters of Paul just yet. So they just went around saying the things that they had experienced.
Yeah, one of the kings even says, these men have clearly been with Jesus.
Exactly.
Like that's all you need is a life that you can say this person has clearly been with Jesus. There's something different. There's something that has been transformed. There's something that's been changed. Which is why the biggest key in evangelism is really to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to tell somebody like, if I don't know, if my TV's broken at home and some friends come over and they're like, man, your TV's pretty jacked, it's going to be really hard for me to sell them on that TV brand. Like, it's like, oh yeah, you should totally buy one of these yourself. Like, it's a total mess. Like, when your life is a total mess, it's really hard to talk about like, hey, I got this savior that's going to do all this great stuff. But the more we live in sin, the harder it is for us to evangelize it. The harder it is for us to be a witness, because our life is the example.
Yeah,
and people are going to look at us.
True transformation.
Right. People are going to look at us and be like, so it's like the Gandhi quote that talks about, I love Christ, I just can't stand your Christians. Like if we're those kind of Christians that are still living in sin or are being hypocritical on everything or judgmental with everything and being like Jonah and getting more angry about a plant dying than about somebody's eternity, then we're going to struggle to do what Jesus told us to do. He said, go and make disciples. Yeah. Like, it's our job. I love something that you said yesterday, and we'll kind of wrap up with this, but you said, if Jesus is my savior, the gospel is my responsibility.
Yes.
And that is the point. Like, it's, if it wasn't the point, then the moment you confess Jesus as Lord, you disappear, float up to heaven, and you're gone. Like, it would just, but you're still here. Yeah. And you're still here because you now have a responsibility. In the same way that somebody introduced you to Christ. Maybe that was a family member, maybe that was a parent, maybe that was a pastor or a teacher somewhere. But somebody introduced you to, this is Jesus. This is the man that can change your life. And now we have a responsibility to go to the people in our families, in our communities, at our workplace, and say, this is Jesus. This is the man that changed my life.
Yeah, and the thing is that those were the last words of Jesus, like go and make disciples of all nations. So we have to take that as our go instructions. Like this is what I have done. Like I already died on the cross. I already rose from the dead. Your debt is paid.
Yep.
It's over. Now go and spread the news so that everybody will know, so that everybody will receive it. So that's what we're supposed to do. So it is our responsibility. That is what he told us to do.
Yep.
So
let's do it.
Let's do it. Absolutely. And I think that something that you said is that we all are supposed to go, and I think that is very important because a lot of people think that that's the job of the pastor.
Right.
so like you pastor, go and preach, right? Like you pastor, you have the seminary school, you go and you tell people about Jesus and we just get here and get happy because more people are coming. But no, that is your responsibility.
Yeah.
It is my responsibility too.
Yeah.
But it is
but
also
not
your
because I'm a pastor.
But not because I'm a pastor.
It's my responsibility because I'm a Christian.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like it is our responsibility, like all of us. If you believe in Jesus, you are responsible for sharing the gospel everywhere you go.
Yep.
So it is not just about titles. It is not about who works at a church, right? If you work at a church, then that's your job.
You're a professional Christian.
Yeah, like that's your job. You do it. No, we all are supposed to do this.
Yeah.
It is our job to share the good news of the gospel. And I love that because I love just calling it the good news because it's good news.
Yep.
You were supposed to die.
Yep.
But Jesus died on your place. That's good news.
I mean,
you were
contrast
supposed to go.
that.
You were supposed to go to hell, but now you can get to go to heaven if you accept Jesus. That's good news.
And contrast that with the message that Nineveh heard that caused all of them to repent.
Yeah. 40 days from now, Nineveh will be destroyed.
Yeah, that's it. 8 words.
Yep.
Like that was his message. 5 in Hebrew. But that's the entire message.
Do you know them in Hebrew?
I do not. I don't speak Hebrew. But he just comes and says, he doesn't say God's going to destroy you.
No.
He doesn't say why God is going to destroy them. He just says 40 days from now, you're going to be destroyed. That is not a very hope-filled message. It doesn't say unless you repent. Like his message was, you're going to be destroyed in 40 days. And they took it upon themselves to say, well, maybe, maybe God will have mercy on us if.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful moment.
They stopped eating. Yeah. They stopped doing anything, and like even the king said, we are going to put a stop to our evil ways. Like they realized we're bad.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of a big speech, It was just the fact that somebody said, you're going to be destroyed. They immediately knew why.
Yep.
And I think that if you talk to anybody, we all know what we're doing.
Yeah. But what I love is, so that's the message that Jonah has to give. The message that we have to give, so much better.
Oh, it's
so much
good.
better than 40
it's
days
so
from now
good.
you're going to be destroyed. No, our message is God loves you so much that he sent his son Jesus to die on a cross for you. Because he doesn't want you to be separated from him. He loves you that much. And when you invite him into your life, he is going to soften those rough edges. He's going to help you in those areas where you need guidance. He's going to be a voice of reason in your life. The Holy Spirit is going to empower you to live the life that you've always known you were supposed to live, but couldn't quite get it. Like when you're struggling with sin, you need the Holy Spirit to help you fight against that temptation.
Yeah.
And that's the gift that God has for you. Because he loves you so much, there's hope.
Yeah, and I love calling it the good news. I really do, because you always want to share good news.
Yeah.
You know, like you know that something good is happening to somebody and you want to tell everybody, right? Like I have great news for you.
Yeah.
Well, we have even greater news. Like we have the good news.
Yep.
Let's tell everybody about it.
I love it. All right, so Jonah, we need obedience, we need compassion, and we need to tell people about Jesus.
You know what is sad?
What's sad?
We don't read anything from Jonah after that point.
No, it literally ends with him on the side of the mountain looking over Nineveh, upset and angry at God.
Yeah.
Because he killed the plant instead of the 120,000 people. And it ends.
That's it. And it is so sad to me, because I wish it would have a happy ending. I love happy endings. I wish it would have been like, okay, God, I see my the error in my ways, and I am on board now, and I'm so glad that this happened, and everybody lives happily ever after. But that was not his ending.
Yeah.
It was just like, we're done.
Yeah. So the question then becomes, what's your ending going to be?
Yeah.
Is it going to end with you on the side of a mountain, angry at God, frustrated at his mercy and his grace, or are you going to get the happy ending?
Or are you just going to go to heaven and be in your little pot? You know, like it was just me and myself and I.
Yeah,
And that
instead of the well done, my good and faithful servant, it's well,
You made it.
you're done. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, that wraps up episode number 2. We'll be back next week. I'll have a new guest with me, and we'll be talking about Samson. So check it out next week. Love y'all.
Bye.